for women were handed unlimited power. But none of them knew the quiet maid watching from the shadows would become the one to change everything. Welcome back to my channel. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more amazing stories. The night Richard made his announcement was one of those evenings people in his circle would talk about for years. His mansion on the hillside glowed like a jewel against the night sky, lit with chandeliers that spilled golden light across marble floors. Guests had gathered for one of his casual dinners, though nothing about Richard's life was casual. His private chef had prepared courses flown in from 3 different countries. A quartet played softly near the grand staircase, and laughter echoed off walls lined with priceless art. But beneath the glitter, there was tension. Richard was planning something, and everyone who knew him understood that when Richard planned something, it was never small. At the long dining table sat 4 women who had each, in their own way, been orbiting his world. There was Amelia, his efficient and composed assistant, who had given him years of loyalty, but rarely received more than polite thanks. She was always in black suits, always writing notes, always invisible to everyone except Richard when he needed something. Then there was Celeste, the ex-girlfriend, a woman of beauty and sharp wit who had once believed she would be the one to marry Richard. That dream ended abruptly, but she still lingered in his orbit, unwilling to let go of the access and status his name gave her. Next sat Isabella, the daughter of Richard's longtime business partner. Young, ambitious, and ruthless, Isabella had been raised in luxury, but was desperate to prove she could outmaneuver anyone, even her own father. And finally, there was Vivian, the socialite, whose entire life revolved around parties, appearances, and headlines. She never turned down champagne, a red carpet, or an opportunity to be photographed in designer gowns. Richard lifted his glass of wine and tapped it gently with a fork. The sound silenced the chatter instantly. His reputation alone demanded attention. But the glint in his eyes tonight carried something more a secret about to be revealed. "Ladies," he began, his voice smooth but commanding, "tonight, I want to test something." He reached into his tailored jacket pocket and pulled out 4 small black envelopes. He set them one by one on the table, the weight of them hitting the polished wood with a quiet thud. Inside each of these envelopes is a card. Not just any card. These are unlimited. The women exchanged puzzled looks. Celeste leaned forward, a smirk tugging at her lips. "Unlimited," she repeated. Richard nodded. "No spending cap. No restrictions. Whatever you want, houses, cars, vacations, jewelry, entire companies, it's yours. Charge it, and it's done." He sat back in his chair, enjoying their disbelief as though it were entertainment. Vivian was the first to snatch her envelope. Tearing it open with shaking hands, she pulled out the sleek, matte black card and gasped. This can't be real." She held it up like a trophy, her diamond bracelets glittering as the card caught the light. Isabella's eyes narrowed with calculation as she opened hers slowly, almost reverently, already plotting what power moves could be made with such limitless financial firepower. Amelia, the assistant, opened hers last, her fingers hesitant. She looked up at Richard as if seeking confirmation. He only raised an eyebrow, as though daring her to doubt him. Celeste, meanwhile, held her card close, her mind racing. All the night she had lain awake, regretting leaving Richard. All the women who whispered about her fall from grace could all be reversed with this little piece of plastic. She smiled slyly, imagining the envy it would ignite. Around the table, the atmosphere shifted. Laughter gave way to adrenaline. Politeness gave way to hunger. For women who had once been connected by Richard were now competitors in an unspoken game of indulgence. And standing just beyond the circle of light, unnoticed as always, was Sophia the maid. Sophia was not like the others. She was not dressed in silks or diamonds, but in a plain uniform. Her dark hair pulled back tightly, her hands occupied with clearing plates and polishing silver. She watched silently as the cards were handed out, her brown eyes sharp beneath lowered lashes. No one paid her attention, no one ever did. To them, she was invisible. But Sophia had lived her life observing people who never noticed her, and she had long ago learned that invisibility could be its own kind of power. When Richard leaned back in his chair and said, "The world is yours, ladies," Let's see what you do with it." The room buzzed with excitement. Toasts were made, glasses clinked, plans whispered. Vivian was already naming the islands she would buy. Isabella muttered something about private jets and company shares. Celeste's smile stretched wider, sharp as glass, while Amelia clutched her card with trembling fingers. Unsure whether this was a gift or a curse, only Sophia in the shadows stayed calm. She finished polishing a silver tray and quietly set it down. She knew something none of them did, that Richard never gave without expecting something in return. He was watching them, measuring them, and every card came with an invisible string. She didn't know yet what the game was, but deep in her bones, she could feel it. This was only the beginning. The days that followed were like setting loose for storms in the world, wreaking havoc in its own way. Richard hadn't exaggerated, the cards were real. No spending limits, no denials, no warnings from banks. The women discovered quickly that the cards bent reality around them. They dove into excess as though they had been starving their entire lives. Amelia, the assistant, was the first to act. For years, she had lived in shadows, her ambitions crushed under Richard's endless demands. She had canceled vacations, skipped birthdays, and eaten meals at her desk while booking his private flights. Now, with a card in her hand, she boarded her own. The very next week, she flew to Monaco, stepping onto yachts she had once only glimpsed in magazines. She posted pictures of herself sipping champagne on the deck, her hair loose for once, her smile wide. She rented entire villas, paid in full with a swipe, and surrounded herself with strangers who were suddenly eager to be her best friends. For the first time in her life, she wasn't Amelia the assistant, she was Amelia the queen. Yet, beneath the laughter and luxury, her phone buzzed with messages she didn't answer, her family asking when she'd come home, old friends wondering why she had gone silent. Amelia scrolled past them, drowning herself in glittering parties that never seemed to end. Celeste, the ex-girlfriend, used her card differently. Her wounds from Richard ran deep, her pride scarred from being left behind. Now, with unlimited wealth, she plotted her revenge not with anger, but with spectacle. She hired stylists to transform her daily look into a performance, photographers to capture her in carefully staged candids, and PR firms to spread her new image across magazines and gossip columns. Soon, she was everywhere, draped in couture at film premieres, stepping out of limousines at fashion weeks, flashing her black card like it was a crown jewel. She reveled in the whispers, "She's back. Look at her now." Richard must be furious. What Celeste didn't see was how quickly adoration curdled into envy. The same followers who praised her in the morning ridiculed her at night, waiting for the slightest stumble. And when the paparazzi caught her staggering out of a club at dawn, the headlines were merciless. Isabella, the business partner's daughter, treated the card like a weapon. Where the others sought pleasure, she sought power. She began by buying controlling shares in companies, her name whispered in boardrooms where no one expected her. She paid consultants to map strategies, hired private investigators to uncover secrets, and funneled money into lobbying firms. With every transaction, her confidence grew. Soon, she was blackmailing rivals, sabotaging competitors, and outmaneuvering even her own father in business deals. Richard watched her rise with a crooked smile, knowing her ambition burned hotter than fire. But ambition was a dangerous flame. It consumed as much as it created. Enemies multiplied around her. Quiet alliances formed in shadows. Isabella began to sleep with one eye open, her phone always locked, her emails encrypted. Unlimited power made her untouchable, or so she thought. Vivian, the socialite, had no patience for subtlety. She used her card like a conductor's baton, orchestrating spectacles the world had never seen. Within weeks, she was hosting weekly galas that made headlines around the globe. She filled mansions with celebrities, lined pools with champagne bottles, and lit up the night sky with fireworks that spelled her name. Each event grew more outrageous. Gold leaf cocktails served by models, live tigers in glass enclosures, orchestras flown in from Europe. Guests clamored for invitations, desperate to be seen at the epicenter of decadence. Vivian soaked in the attention, her laugh echoing through halls dripping in excess. But her parties blurred into chaos. Fights broke out, scandals brewed, secrets spilled under too much alcohol. She didn't care. For her, the card wasn't about wealth. It was about immortality through spectacle. Richard, meanwhile, observed everything with the patience of a man who knew the ending long before the first act began. He sat in his study at night, scrolling through reports, photographs, and whispers collected by his network of informants. Every laugh, every purchase, every reckless move, they all confirmed what he already suspected. He sipped his scotch, chuckling under his breath. Let's see who lasts. But Sophia the maid was also watching. Invisible as ever, she moved quietly through the mansion, overhearing phone calls, glancing at discarded invitations, noticing the restless look in Richard's eyes when he thought he was alone. One evening, as she carried a tray past his study, she froze at the sound of his voice. Richard was on the phone, his tone sharper than usual. "They don't know it yet," he said, "but only one will keep the power. The rest will lose everything." His words hung in the air like a blade. Sophia's heart raced. She wasn't supposed to hear this. She turned quickly, nearly dropping the tray, and hurried down the hallway. But even as her hands trembled, her mind sharpened. Unlike the four women, blinded by indulgence, Sophia now knew the truth. Richard was testing them. This wasn't generosity, it was a game. And in that moment, the quiet maid realized something extraordinary. She might be the only one with the perspective to win. The downfall came slowly at first, like cracks in glass, barely visible until the entire pane shattered. Amelia's glittering escape in Monaco soon soured. The strangers she surrounded herself with weren't friends. They were parasites who clung to her so long as the champagne flowed. She began to notice the way they whispered when she left the room, how their smiles faded the moment she stopped paying. One morning, she woke up to find her villa ransacked, jewelry gone, designer dresses stolen. She called the police, but no one came. She swiped her black card to replace what was stolen, but the thrill was gone. Loneliness crept in, like a shadow. For the first time, Amelia wondered if she had traded years of loyalty for a hollow crown. Celeste's empire of image burned even brighter, and then collapsed spectacularly. For months, she dominated gossip columns, her face plastered across magazines, her every outfit dissected by fashion critics. But her obsession with being adored led her into dangerous territory. She paid tabloids to plant stories, fabricated feuds for attention, and hired actors to pose as admirers. The lie grew too large to contain. When a journalist exposed her staged scandals, the backlash was swift. Her followers, once worshipful, turned on her with venom. The same card that had elevated her became a symbol of ridicule. She tried to fight back, to buy silence, but reputations cannot be purchased back once trust is broken. She had wanted immortality through fame, yet she had only made herself a spectacle for mockery. Isabella's kingdom of power was the most fragile of all. She had played the game of money like a seasoned predator, but predators attract hunters. Corporate rivals banded together, whispering in boardrooms, filing lawsuits, leaking documents. Her meteoric rise was followed by an equally spectacular implosion. Deals fell apart, alliances dissolved, and enemies she had humiliated began circling. Her father, the man she sought to surpass, cut ties publicly to save his own empire. Isabella sat alone in her glass penthouse, the city glittering below her, holding the black card in trembling hands. She could still buy anything, but she could not buy trust. Power without allies was an empty throne. Vivienne's fall was the loudest. Her parties, once hailed as legendary, grew notorious for chaos. Videos of drunken brawls, overdoses, and scandals leaked across social media. The city council began cracking down, neighbors filed complaints, and lawsuits piled on her doorstep. Guests stopped coming not out of disinterest, but out of fear. The endless parties that had defined her turned into a grotesque circus. She tried to throw one last grand event to reclaim her throne of excess, but half the guests never arrived. The night ended with silence in a half-empty ballroom. Her name now synonymous with waste and disgrace. And then, as Richard had promised, the cards were taken. Not with drama, but with quiet efficiency. One morning, Amelia's card declined at a luxury boutique. Celeste's card froze mid-transaction in Paris. Isabella's security system locked her out of her own office when her payments bounced. Vivian's party staff walked out when her accounts went dry. The black cards, once keys to limitless kingdoms, became useless pieces of plastic. Only Sophia remained. She had watched it all unfold, quietly cleaning around Richard's study as he chuckled at the reports. She saw the satisfaction in his eyes, the way he treated their collapse, not with cruelty, but with curiosity, as if they were pieces in a game he had orchestrated. And then, one night, when the mansion was silent, he summoned her. Sophia entered cautiously, wiping her hands on her apron. Richard sat behind his desk, a single lamp casting shadows across his face. In front of him lay one final black envelope. He gestured to it. "You've been watching, haven't you?" Her breath caught. She nodded, unsure if speaking would break the spell of the moment. Richard leaned forward. "I gave them everything, and they destroyed themselves. Greed, vanity, power, indulgence, each of them chose their path. But you never asked, never reached, never begged. Tell me, Sophia, if you had been given the card, what would you have done?" Her voice trembled but did not break. "I would have thought about what others needed. I've seen hunger. I've seen children without homes, families without hope. Money doesn't make meaning, it only magnifies what's inside. Those women, they magnified emptiness." Richard smiled, for once without the sharpness of mockery. He slid the envelope toward her. "Then perhaps you should be the one to hold it. Take it, use it. Show me something different." Sophia hesitated, her hand hovering over the envelope as though it might burn her. Finally, she opened it, and there it was, the same sleek, matte black card. But when she touched it, she didn't feel hunger or desperation. She felt responsibility. In the months that followed, Sophia used the card unlike anyone before her. She funded schools in forgotten towns, built shelters for the homeless, stocked food banks, and created clinics where there had been none. She invested not in luxuries, but in futures. For the first time, people whispered not about Richard's women, but about the maid who had transformed lives. Her face appeared in newspapers, not on gossip pages, but in stories of hope. She never sought recognition, but it found her anyway. Richard watched from afar, his smirk replaced by something softer, almost pride. He had tested greed, vanity, ambition, indulgence, and all had failed. But humility, the one quality he had never expected to find in his mansion, had won. In the end, the four women who once mocked the maid now looked at her with disbelief. They had wasted everything while she had built an empire of kindness. And for Richard, the true game was finally over. The card hadn't chosen the wealthiest, the loudest, or the most ambitious. It had chosen the one no one expected. The maid had become the queen,